Welcome, everyone. The records are now open. Whew. Definitely feeling the nerves today, as this episode is going to be a little different than the normal way we play together here on Akashic Answers with Emily every Wednesday, almost every Wednesday. Not last Wednesday, because those of you, hi, Miss Viv, you are supposed to be in choir. You better get off Instagram, girl. But I'm sure she's actually very curious. I'm sure you are curious, kiddo, about what I'm going to say today, what I'm going to share about the trauma that happened in my family last week. And the first thing I'll say, because I feel like anytime where she's like, I want to go home, I got yelled at. Oh, baby, I know. And you're definitely sensitive and raw because of everything that we've been through. But take some deep breaths, hang in there, kiddo. Let go of any being a victim and become an empowered victor. Sorry, guys. And Vivi, I got to talk to everybody. Hey, Alana's here too. Alana, I was just having a private conversation with Viv, who should be in choir, but she keeps joining every Wednesday. My new biggest fan, my teenage daughter. Woo! You know you're doing something right if you can get your teenage daughter to watch you on social media. So the first things that I want to talk about is, or that I want to share with you all, is just that everyone is okay. London is okay. He is safe. And we're thriving during this time. It's challenging, but I want to talk to you all and share with you really vulnerably what I'm discovering, what we're learning through being required to show up to pretty significant trauma in real time. This is the way that I love teaching, yet I don't know that I've ever taught from a space that is so raw and vulnerable as what I'm going to share with you, but that really creates the best teaching out there. Love you, Alana. Thanks for jumping in, but you can come back and catch the replay. So let's just start out by talking about what happened last Monday. So while I was teaching live inside of my membership group, the energy was a little bit off. I did notice that the energy was a bit off. However, one of the biggest blessings in this story that I'm about to share with you all is that I was actually spared the gut-wrenching moments of not knowing what the outcome of this circumstance was when my 16-year-old was carjacked and kidnapped. He managed to escape. And I didn't know about it until after he was already physically safe. I could feel that there was something a little bit off that was happening on this day, but I wasn't clued in. I felt like I was definitely spared. Apollo is scratching my chair back there. From the intensity of what was happening as it was happening. And so I feel really, really grateful for that. And I'm going to circle back to that a little bit later, because the Akashic records have shown me a way to thank my son and be empowered to my son for actually sparing me those details. But as the story unfolds, we'll get there. So I'm teaching inside of my membership group, the Ether, teaching about the Hermetic principles when my phone just begins blowing up. And it is the same local number calling over and over and over again. And probably on the 10th time it happened, I'm like, all right, it's obviously not going to stop. I need to answer the call. So I pause my live training. I take the call, and it is my 16-year-old on the other end, absolutely frantic because the car has been wrecked. And he tells me, Mom, I was carjacked. I left campus to go to get lunch. I had the windows down. And it was a young woman, by the way. I think that will probably be surprising to many of you, is that it was a young woman, probably between the ages of 25 and 35, that jumped in the window and held a piece of rebar to my son's throat and said, if you don't drive me to a particular location in Oregon, mind you, we live in Nevada, I will kill you. And she bound his wrists, held his foot down on the gas, forcing him to drive 130 miles an hour through town and then on the freeway. And finally, I'm going to have to put Apollo out. Apollo, kitty cat, you got to go. Thank you all for being patient. I should have thrown you out before, Polly. He's probably feeling the energy and like the intense, the high frequency I'm not nearly as calm this morning as I am. I'm noticing that as I'm sharing the story with you all, I definitely feel it coming up. So I just ask for support and witness as I share this, and as each of you hold that space for me. It's helping that energy to move. So thank you for being a bigger part of my story. And so let's see, where do we leave off? Yes, she was holding his foot down on the gas, forcing him to drive at incredibly high speeds, which the kid's 16. He's had his driver's license since December. Okay. Not necessarily the most experienced driver, but a phenomenal driver. He did get 100% on his driver's test. And after this experience, I definitely feel safe driving with this kid. He is a fantastic driver, got a great head on his shoulders. So about 30 miles north of town was when he felt like, he was keeping his calm, keeping his cool to the best of his ability through this experience, when he got the idea to basically negotiate with her to say, hey, you take the car, just let me go, do whatever you want to with the car. And she was down with this idea. So they began to slow down from going ridiculously high speeds and pull over into the right-hand lane where they could make the switch. And when he slowed down enough that he could get away, he bailed out of the car. And at that point, she was trying to crawl into his lap to get control of the vehicle anyway. And she didn't have full control of the vehicle, so she crashed it into the guardrails. He rolls on the ground, gets up, shakes it off a little bit, right? Notices that she has just crashed the car and she can't get the car to run anymore. She's trying to back it up. She can't get the car to run. So she gets out of the car and begins chasing my son with the rebar down the freeway. So he's running, screaming down the freeway. Nobody's stopping. He decides to go down the off-ramp, leaps over barbed wire, and finally gets a woman's attention who stops and waits with him, calls the police, calls me. God bless her. Angel, safe family. So grateful for this woman. Laura, thank you. And once there was another adult there present, the lady who had kidnapped London took off in another direction. The police were able to find her and to arrest her. She was charged with, so far, 4 felony counts. Her life will most definitely never be the same after this experience. Once London got a hold of me and a hold of his dad, we went together with my oldest son to the scene of the crime where the police were still holding him, and met back up with London. At this point in time, they had also captured, like I shared, they captured his kidnapper, and she was being held in a police car about a quarter of a mile down the road. And I really felt compelled to, I felt like I wanted to see this woman. Although the interesting thing is, and I want to acknowledge that part of this was definitely me being in shock, and there was a disassociation between the reality of what was happening and how fast my brain was processing it. But there also was evidence of the work that I've done in terms of, and ironically, this is what I was teaching on earlier in the day when I got the call, was about the principle of correspondence, which says as above, so below, as within, so without. Meaning whatever vibrational frequency we choose to hold, the outside world is going to show up and to meet us in that frequency. And it's more about what we're choosing, the frequency we're choosing to hold. That has more effect on the outcome of what's happening in the outer world than when we step into a state of knowingness and mastery. Our inner world has an effect on the outer world, which is more important than allowing the outer world to affect our inner world, which they both can happen. But once we learn to cultivate a command of our own energy and we learn how to use these hermetic principles, we want to use them to our advantage. We don't want them being used on us. We want to use our wisdom to create what we're experiencing in the world around us. Make sense? And so there was a part of me that was calm because I was choosing to stay calm. I was calm because I knew that London was safe. And I also knew that my thoughts of what could have happened would be creating potential next stages of unfoldment in this process. I also knew while I was holding this level of calm, whether it was divine intervention that was making me calm, whether it was disassociation that was making me calm, whether it was my own work that I've done that was making me calm, I was calm. And I knew that in this state of calm, it was very important to forgive this woman, to have a state of forgiveness for her. So I walked over to where, Shay, I'm glad you're here. I walked over to where the police were holding this woman. And at first, the police didn't realize that I was London's mom. They thought I was a looky-loo, there to, get my nose up all in the business of what was happening with this woman. And for some reason, it was really interesting. I didn't say, no, I'm his mom. One of the officers, as they were trying to shoo me away, then all of a sudden they were like, wait a second, you're his mom. It was like there was this knowingness there that I was his mom. And I said, yeah, I'm his mom. And I said, I feel like I want to see this woman. And I could feel their compassion for me as a mother wanting to have some sort of a connection with what just happened. And they also are probably trained to not let that kind of interaction happen. I mean, they didn't know that I was coming from a state of calm or like really what energy I was bringing to the situation. And I said to them, I feel like it's really important that I let this woman know that I forgive her. And there was a higher part of me that knew in those moments that while I had access to my calm and I wasn't freaking out with anger, that I needed to speak those words to her, that I forgive you. And again, I didn't have access to the anger. I asked my Akashic records later, what's preventing me from accessing that anger? And I got some really beautiful answers. But what I noticed I felt that wasn't anger was gratitude. Well, I was so grateful to this woman for not killing my son. That's really all I could access in that moment was gratitude and wanting to hold this state of forgiveness. And so when I told the officers that I felt this need to speak this to her, they just stepped out of the way and they said, okay, say whatever you need to say. Don't get close because she could spit on you. And so I was probably 15 feet away from the car and they moved out of the way and she and I just locked eyes. And it was strange because like to a certain degree, that disassociation, that numbness was there. But then I was also present to understanding that something bigger than me was happening in that moment. And I couldn't quite process all of it. But I knew that there was this exchange happening and we locked eyes. And y'all, it was like I could see the addict in her. I could see the victim in her. I could see her darkness. But I could also see the light in this woman. And I knew that as she was not looking upon me with kindness. If I ever felt like I was looking into the eyes of a demon or someone who had been possessed in some way, it was in this moment. But I didn't have a judgment for it. Actually, what I was able to see was my own darkness, my own shadow, my own addict, where I have been addicted to vices to keep me numb rather than being fully present with my own pain. And I just had tremendous compassion for this woman. And I knew on higher levels of quantum energy that I couldn't really explain to you more than I knew on the spiritual level there was massive shift happening as she was confronting me with all of her darkness, and I was just holding the space of light. And then I said twice to her, I forgive you. I forgive you. And she pretty much went apeshit after that. Just like where she was very calm and but staring me down in the beginning, it was like I had triggered some kind of darkness within her, and she just began to lose it. And at that point, I didn't have anything else to say. So I just walked away from her. I walked away from the officers. And we went on to the next stages of the process, which was to take London to the emergency room. And some really important points that I want to share with you that came through. I feel like I was channeling for him when we were sitting there in the emergency room. And this is really important for any of you who have been through trauma. I'm going to break down some step-by-steps later before we finish up our time here together today of methodology that you yourself can use if you do have trauma from your past or there's trauma in your present right now. And at this point, I was still very just raw and vulnerable and speaking what was coming through the records. I hadn't created methodology around it, so to speak. But I think it's a really important part of how I want to invite you all to flip the script on your trauma. And so as we were sitting in the emergency room, I could tell that he was going over the processing in his own mind. And he said, oh, Mom, I didn't know what to do. And I could have done this at this point, and I could have done this at this point. And I could tell that he was processing and reliving the experience, almost from like reliving it as the victim, as being overcome by someone else and not knowing what to do in the moment. And that's when I could even feel the vibration of my energy shifting as I said what I said next. And this was beyond the access of Emily, his mom. This came as a direct channel from the Akash. And I said, London, I know it felt like you were winging it and you didn't know what to do, and that scares you. But the truth is, your intuition led you perfectly in every moment. You played every single card correctly. And the evidence of that is that you're alive and that she's alive and that no other bystanders were killed in this process. So I don't know any other adult, definitely not a teenager, a new driver, that could have made every single move correctly like you did. And I said, thank you. You're a superstar. Not only did you save your life and you saved her life and you saved the lives of innocent bystanders, but you also saved the life of your family, because what we would have been processing if you would have made a mistake and we would have lost you would be devastating. And so this construct, this framework of reliving the experience through the perspective of empowerment rather than being a victim will 100% change the way you process your trauma. And so whether you're experiencing trauma right now or in your past, I'm just going to invite everybody, because you know that when you come into these spaces with me, I want you to learn something. I want you to be, I would say, entertained. I know that this is like dramatic entertainment. I like to keep it a little lighter, keep you laughing more usually, because we're getting deep and intense today. But I want you to have context on how to apply this to your own life. So just lay your hand on your heart and get deep with yourself for a moment and ask about the biggest unhealed trauma in your life, and your guides, your angels, your higher self will bring something into your mind right now. And I want to invite you to begin thinking about this trauma from the perspective of empowerment rather than you being the victim. Because we've got to flip the script on how we process. If this is making sense to you guys, send some love, likes, hearts across the screen. That's okay. So that's there one more piece of the story, and then I'm going to lean into my journal here where I've kept a lot of my notes, and I'm just going to read to you from my journal. Some of it's been channeling that's come in, some of it has been just reflections, downloads that have come up for me. But the one more piece that I want to share with you all regarding just details of the story is that the next day we went to her bail hearing. A bail hearing was set for this woman. And let's see. Brett Shelton, who just said, fuck this, is out. This is too raw and sensitive of a space to have any trolls coming in. So if you act like a damn troll all up in here, you're going to get blocked, just so you know. And I'm not surprised, because we are talking about really dark energy and things happening with this particular story. So there might be some more trolls that come in. That's cool. We'll get them out of here. Don't worry about it. So the next day, in attending the bail hearing, this woman was assigned a public defender who shared in court that she was a victim of sex trafficking. Not by London, but that's what she was doing in Reno in the first place. Was she had been brought here against her will. And that just brought in another level of understanding the importance of healing ourselves, that hurt people, that karma perpetuates itself. And it was also really valuable for me to be able to hold another level of compassion for this woman and understand pieces to her story that I didn't previously understand. And I was sharing this with a friend of mine who said, wow, well, London perhaps saved her life as well, and not specifically that day when they could have crashed. But if that is true, and this young woman had been sex trafficked, and that's why she was brought here to Reno, being in jail and having, it's not going to be jail, it's going to be prison for her, but being in a facility where my hope and prayer for her is that she gets the rehabilitation that she needs, is potentially a better timeline for her than living out a disastrous timeline of what could have been if, and I hesitate to even fill in the blanks around this, because this was another major lesson that I learned along the way in terms of the what could have beens. Okay. So I'm going to take a deep breath now and just thank you all for being here and sharing this time and this space with me. And then I'm going to shift over into my journal that where I've just gathered downloads and things that I want to share with you all as we're going through this process. So those are all the details of the story. I'm just going to shake it out a little bit too, which, by the way, when you do talk about your trauma and things come up for you, you're going to bring it up. You're going to bring a charge up inside of your body. So figuring out how to move that energy through your body is important, and you need ways to be able to shake it off. So just some gentle shaking with the intention of moving that energy through your body, and allowing Mother Earth to help you ground it is one of the easiest ways to do it. Okay, so here are the lessons that I have learned. Not all of them, but we'll hit some of the high level ones here. Divine protection is available to all of us at all times. It's really important that you ask for it. He did ask for help and protection along his own journey. I remember that morning, it did pop into my awareness. Now, while I was spared the intensity of the knowing what was happening while the outcome was still uncertain, and I feel very grateful for that, it did come into my awareness that morning to call in divine protection for your children. And I don't always do that. So that is something that I have been doing Like literally the moment I wake up, I'm calling in divine protection and sending light into the world, which is a shift. It's almost happening effortlessly. Before this incident happened, um, and I'm just going to be really raw and honest and vulnerable here. My early morning thoughts, I had to direct them. I would wake up and I would notice that there was stress left over from whatever I was processing in the dreamscape, or some piece of work, something that we're building new here inside of the academy, because we are under a time of huge transformation. We've been just working on so many shifts and different programs and redoing this and redoing that. And there's a lot of stress that goes along with that. And so I noticed I wake up feeling that stress and I need to redirect my thoughts really quickly. But I'm getting good at this. Getting good at redirecting my thoughts, mastering my thoughts. And one of the biggest things that I learned is how important it is to not spend time thinking about what could have happened to him. And to tie this all together, one, divine protection is available. Ask for it. And if you call in divine protection over your life, you're not going to have to spend your time thinking about what could have happened to you. You're going to be protected. And you must trust this. I wrote down, do not engage in what could have happened thinking. When something has been shown or proven to you, why would you spend precious energy counteracting what you know to be true? That was direct channeling that came in from my guides, and I'll read it to you again. Do not engage in what could have happened thinking. When something has been shown or proven to you, why do you spend precious energy counteracting what you know to be true? Okay. This requires, or abstaining from thought requires the discipline of thought mastery, because what we create in the world comes from our thoughts, and every single thought you're thinking counts. And like I said, I'm getting pretty good at mastering my thoughts. The Akashic Records has helped tremendously, because as you go through the training on learning how to read the Akashic Records, the records are going to point out to you what your repetitive thought patterns are. And most of our repetitive thought patterns are playing out or happening below our awareness. They're subconscious, so we don't even realize that you're thinking them. And here's the thing, when you have a lot of those, it's like energy attracts like energy. You just bring more and more and more thoughts that you don't even realize that you're thinking into your field when you do not have mastery or discipline over your thoughts. On the contrary, when you do have mastery and discipline over your thoughts, like attracts like. You can keep the mind more clear, because the more of these repetitive thought patterns you clear out, the easier it is to recognize when you're having one and to choose differently in that very moment. So my own training in the Akashic Records has shown me where my automatic thought patterns and trauma and victimhood is playing out in my life. And then once I see it, I get to choose something different. Lisa says, what about divine protection from your negative thoughts? Well, yeah. Okay. So what I'm hearing right now, Lisa, is the guides can definitely ask for divine protection of your negative thoughts. If you're noticing that you're still having the negative thoughts, a more or a higher level, or as we spiritually mature and we get mastery over our thoughts, we don't even have to waste time in that way of asking for protection or defending ourselves against our negative thoughts, because we're not having them. So I would encourage anyone who is here today and you're specifically leaning into your trauma and working through your trauma, is rather than asking for protection around your negative thoughts and then being okay with continuing to think negative thoughts, go right into the root of your creation, which is thoughts, and work with your negative thoughts. Ask, where did these thoughts come from? Ask, what am I learning from these thoughts? How are they my divine teacher? What do I need to do to release them? Those are the three basics. Where did this come from? What am I learning from it? How do I release it? So again, channeled directly from my own Akashic records regarding negative thoughts, it is best to not engage in the negative thoughts, as all thought holds energetic vibration and creation energy. And sometimes, especially if we are experiencing a trauma or we're dealing with a trauma or we feel like the victim, it's really easy to go into a victim mentality of what could have happened. I'm going to encourage you all to have a high level of discipline with yourself and don't do this, especially if the divine has already shown and proven to you that you have protection, that you have guardianship over your life. Okay. Oh, here's a really good one. So my records also said, think about how much change you can affect simply through the subtraction of thought. So again, this idea around having discipline over our thoughts and discipline over what could have happened, or discipline over the constant stressful thoughts that we're thinking all of the time. Simply subtract those. Get clear about what thoughts are playing out on autopilot on your life and subtract those thoughts. Don't show up for those thoughts. Because every thought you are thinking is creating a vibrational frequency, is creating a feedback loop with the ether, with the universe, with this amazing technology that we call reality, that is here to create whatever it is that we choose or desire to experience based on our thought vibrations. Okay, so how to process trauma more easily. 1, flip the script to one of empowerment. Ask for vision, ask for guidance, ask for perspective. You must ask for it. If you ask, it will be revealed to you. Robert G in the house. I see you here. Yeah, adding to your life by subtraction of distraction and block. Joe, thank you for sharing that. This is valuable to you. I appreciate you. Cool. Okay, so that's step 1. Flip the script to empowerment. Ask for help. If you ask to see something differently, the script will flip and you will see things that you've never seen before. It's phenomenal. One of my favorite things to do. Ask to see the situation from the highest frequency of truth and empowerment. When I asked, and I had intuitively begun tapping into some of this idea of the empowerment script when I was in the emergency room with London, but then later, when I was quiet with myself, I specifically asked to see from the frequency, from the highest frequency of truth that was available to me, and from the perspective of empowerment. And that's when I was able to see more of the soul contract that London had with this woman. That he was a spiritual warrior who stepped up and said, I will take on that mission. I feel so grateful that the grace that his soul gave to me as a mom, that I didn't have to know about that until after he was safe. Like, this dude so divinely orchestrated an amazing lesson for so many of us. Like, this is allowing me to see where I'm still playing a victim in my life. I'll share some of those vulnerable notices about myself that I really don't want to talk to you about, because, well, I'm like any human. I like to be really good at what I do, and I like for other people to think, oh, wow, she's got it together. And I do have it together, and I mess up a lot of things along the way too. And I'm not perfect. And there are areas where my own issues still embarrass me, and I'm going to tell you what those are, but I think that's the best way to teach. It's what we all have to do. It's like back to that moment when I was standing face to face with this woman, and we talk about namaste, the light within me salutes the light within you. Well, guess what? The shadow within me was saluting the shadow within her. And I think we all need to learn to see ourselves in the destruction that other people are causing, so we can clean it up and take personal responsibility for the areas where we're still in our own victimhood or where we're still in our own darkness. Okay, back to the methodology around how to process trauma. 1, flip the script to empowerment, ask for guidance. 2, ask to see the situation from the highest frequency of truth and empowerment. 3, ask for what is possible for me now. What is possible for me now? When you ask yourself that question, you are moving from the state of being a victim to being the victor. And your consciousness can be measured by the questions that you ask. Consciousness is how you see yourself or how you know yourself in relationship to the environment around you. People, places, things. That's what consciousness is. And your consciousness grows and expands can actually be measured by the nature of the questions that you ask. So when you know the right questions to ask yourself, life's going to get really good. And that's one I want you to keep in your back pocket when you feel like you are the victim or you've been traumatized in a situation. What is possible for me now that wasn't possible for me before? As soon as you ask yourself that question, notice what flows into your mind, because you are going to raise octaves almost instantaneously. You are going to go from being your shadow, unempowered, imprisoned, oppressed self, to understanding the gift within the wound. And that is an imperative part of healing, is that you understand the gift within the wound. And finally, when it comes to healing your trauma, do not engage with the destructive thoughts of what could have happened. Have a high level of discipline with yourself. All right, so if you are just joining us, be sure to rewind a little bit at some point, because I just outlined methodology for anyone who is dealing with trauma, or you have trauma from previously in your life that has not fully been processed or healed. All right, now I'm going to share the really vulnerable stuff now about where I noticed where I'm still a victim in my life. I also want to point out that we are working under massively powerful eclipse energies right now. And the astrology or the energy signatures behind what's available to us right now, it's just, you guys, it's huge. Karmic cycles coming into completion. And one of my biggest karmic cycles has been where I play the victim. Perhaps you can see yourself in that too, maybe where you've played the victim. And one of the biggest calls on my life, or my mission here on the planet, is to be free, is to lead people to freedom. And so I'm going to be looking at all octaves of that particular theme, from my own victimhood into the areas where I get to be empowered and free myself. I noticed that when I wasn't super angry with this woman, and I'll say I've had moments where my anger has flared up. I haven't been totally anger free, but anger has not been the predominant energy that I felt towards this woman. The predominant feelings have been compassion and forgiveness. And I was thinking, I was reflecting, I'm like, what does that tell me about myself? Oh, that tells me that I am no longer a victim to circumstances of life. I will not play that role. I will not cast myself in the role of the victim in those circumstances. You know where I did find that I was a victim? And your triggers will show you where they are. Remember, I was able to stay very calm in processing the situation. Where I lost my cool a little bit, I had a little misplaced anger, was in the emergency room. So we're waiting. I'm just like, this place is not busy. I've got a kid who is traumatized. I'm getting pissed off that it's taken the doctors so long to get in there. The physician comes in. He looks at London, like not really even examining him, but looks at him and here's the story about what he's just been through. And I can see that the doctor is dumbfounded. He's like, wow, well, like your vitals are okay. You appear to be okay. You can go now. And I'm just like, no, what? Like, where's the psychological support and evaluation? Like, I want to leave here with support on how to help him moving forward. And this is where I've got some, like, my own embarrassment comes up, and then I'm like, it is what it is. It's just where I'm working. But how many of you all feel a victim to money and finances? This has been a theme of my life. I was on food stamps when I started this work in 2015. And as much success as I've grown in my business, I mean, I was just thinking about this in the past 30 days, 10 of those days I've been on vacation with my family, with my kids. I couldn't have done that back in 2015. But I still have these clinches that have me around money, even though I've been able to prove to myself that I can source and resource from within through my genius. I was pissed off that this doctor was about to send me out of the emergency room without what I felt like was getting my money's worth of medical support for my kid. He's like, we can only help people who are psychologically here on a 5150, like a suicide attempt or hold. And so I said to him, hey, with all due respect, doctor, because he said to us, this is the first time I've ever had this happen. I don't really know what to do for you. And my response is, hey, I get that you're a first timer. We're first timers too, but figure it out. And then he got a little pissy and defensive, and I recognized I needed to take a couple breaths and simmer down just a little bit. That I had some misplaced anger coming out on this poor man. And that was another interesting thing that I noticed, that again, human Emily judges human Emily for this. Divine higher self Emily knows that I'm in perfect sync with my own processing and what's happening here in the world. But look at how easy it was for me to forgive the woman that almost killed my kid. But the man, that masculine energy, I was ready to light him up because I didn't feel like he properly attended to the medical needs of my son. Interesting notice. So I noticed that I'm still a victim in my life around what can have a financial grip on me. I'm also still a victim in my life to where I feel like the masculine isn't showing up and doing his part. Help me see this higher, give me a higher perspective. But it's awesome because those areas where I get triggered and I notice my calm, cool, collected self going away, that shows me where I need to work. It shows me where I can ask for that divine help and that divine guidance. And this is what we need to begin to embrace in ourselves and really support in ourselves and each other, is that we all have work to do in terms of noticing our issues, our trauma, and our darkness, and getting smart about how we move through it and how we shift it. All right, the choices that I'm making now are, I'm simply like the areas where I'm seeing my own lingering trauma. Laura, I see you here. Thank you for being here. The areas where I have my own lingering shit happening, right? It's super simple. I'm getting clear about what thoughts support what I want to create. It's all about the thoughts. And I'm no longer willing to show up for the thoughts that create the victim mentality for me. But I've got to get clear on what those thoughts are. That's how self-sabotage kicks y'all in the butt, kicks me in the butt, is it's subtle and we don't realize what the thoughts are that we are having in those moments. Another area where I had some misplaced anger, I got a little pissed off. It was with the process of the insurance company and my car being totaled. And I'm wanting the insurance company to show up and be like, hey, we got you, Emily. It's good. You don't have to worry. No, they're questioning me, trying to find holes in the story to make sure I'm not committing insurance fraud. And I got a little pissy about that. I had to calm myself back down. All right, you got a trigger here because you feel like you're not showing up getting the help that you need through this process. Don't play the victim role. And then once I was able to calm myself back down and be fully expressed, that insurance adjuster flipped his switch and is totally on my side now. Right? But his energy, but our energies were matching each other there for a while as we were negotiating the next steps of how we were going to either be friends or not friends. And so that's, again, just some of the really vulnerable aspects of where, and here's another area where I just lost it. I'm like, that was a good one, a good notice about myself. And then I saw Rhonda say more negative male. Yeah, more negative male energy around there. Shoot, where was it? Maybe it'll come back. Nope, gone. Sorry. But you know, if I remember it, I will definitely tell you. I want you guys to get the most out of this experience here today as possible. All right, so now I want to share just a few of the collective, the bigger picture, where humanity goes next energy that's become clear for me after this. This was a really interesting one that came in from my records. They said, other dimensions learn a lot by observing us in our ignorance and our darkness, meaning humans. And so a really cool thing to recognize about the Akashic records is not only are we downloading information from the records, but we're also uploading information. It's like this giant experiment of consciousness unfolding, not only here on planet Earth, but in all of the galaxies, is being uploaded. It's being recorded to the Akashic records, and other beings. It's like, imagine if you could just sit and observe through like the two-way mirror, toddlers who are in a certain state of immaturity and ignorance and don't have all of the knowledge and things figured out, stumbling through a particular process together. You are going to learn so much. And what this statement, and I'll read it to you again, other dimensions learn a lot by observing us in our ignorance and in our darkness. How this helped me when this dropped into my field was like, oh, wow, we don't have to be ashamed of our ignorance and our darkness. Yes, we want to take responsibility for it and fix it, but shame and being ashamed of ourselves, that'll knock you back down on the consciousness scale faster than anything. What I was able to see was value in observing the different stages of consciousness expansion, maturity, and how helpful that is for higher dimensional frequencies that are watching us humans and learning so much from the mistakes that we're making as we're finding our way here. Likewise, as above, so below, as society continues to expand our consciousness collectively, I want to invite you to, rather than judging the other people's darkness and their stupidity and their ignorance around you, how can we learn from that? How can we observe without judgment and learn. Because then the ignorance and the darkness becomes something of value rather than something of the degradation. Sorry, one of those words that belittles our society, that moves us backwards. Make sense? Should I attempt to say it again? Degrade. There are too many D's and G's in there and getting me all confused. But I think you're following me. I think you know what I mean, right? Mama Werewolf says, I wonder if the Galactics have a drink and a chuckle as they watch us do some stupid stuff. I 100% think that they do. Definitely do. I mean, I look at my kids sometimes doing stupid things and I have a really good laugh about it. But what if we could observe the darkness, the stupidity, the ignorance in others, whether you feel like it's somebody who is not at your level of consciousness or evolutionary processing, or maybe it's the government or whoever else you want to look at that you think is just a radical dumbass out there. And rather than going into judgment, what about looking at what there is for you to learn? Collectively, I think that the next phase of evolution will happen for us when we allow the darkness we see in others to show us where our own darkness is. So yes, namaste. The light within me salutes the light within you when the darkness within me salutes the darkness within you. And rather than judging and ostracizing each other for having this shadow and this darkness, which we all have, we begin to learn from it and embrace it and to work with it in this different way. Next phase of evolution for humanity will come when we embrace darkness in that way. Let's see. Next steps for humanity. Yep. Seeing the light is everywhere and seeing the darkness within ourselves, practicing compassion and humility. One of the biggest reasons I felt called to share the areas where human Emily was still embarrassed at my misplaced anger, or the areas where I'm still working, or you should be past that issue by now, is embracing humility. We all must be able to embrace this within ourselves to truly move forward and usher the planet into the 5D, which is where we're heading very rapidly. Oh, and another thing, just about accelerated timelines. And especially if you are a healer, a visionary, a wisdom keeper here on the planet, and you know that your mission is to help usher us into the 5D, and you called forward an accelerated timeline in your life, be ready and prepared. Don't be scared about what you're inviting in, but recognize that we are working in a plane of duality where darkness is what's going to fuel the acceleration. So you want to learn to work with darkness in this powerful way so you don't have to be afraid of it. Yes, we came here for the contrast and for the growth. So it's not necessarily about the darkness going away. It's about reframing how we work with it. And so if you are on an accelerated timeline, or you want to timeline crunch a specific issue or area of your life, be ready and be prepared to work with darkness in a very dynamic way, because that's what it's going to look like. Okay. One last thing that is, this is one of my favorite takeaways from the whole thing. And I can't even take you on a stream of consciousness progression of how I even got to this one, because it's about UFOs and their ships. But it's likely one of my favorite things. I can sort of see how I was able to open my mind to receive this download, considering the different aspects of thought that I had explored through this, and just the deeper level of reality and gravity that I had experienced around our thoughts creating our reality. So the UFO ships that are connected to their driver and work by connecting to the consciousness of the driver. So basically the driver of the ship, pilot, should I use pilot of the ship rather than driver? The conductor, maybe, I don't know. I don't know what the right word for the person who is, steering the UFO ship. I don't know what that person's official title is. But let's think about this concept for a moment of that connection of consciousness to the ship. And captain, there we go. I love that. Be the captain. Robert, yeah, the captain of the ship. So the captain of the ship thinks go left and it goes left, go right and it goes right. This is a very watered down version of how the captains drive the ships. But I started thinking about this level of consciousness connection to the being operating the ship and the actual ship itself. And all of a sudden I realized, holy crap, you all, we're all doing that with our environment happening around us at every single moment. Our environment, the ether, the field that is around us is connected to each one of our own consciousness. And as we think thoughts, our environment is so fluid. That's like our ship. And the environment is showing up and honoring the thoughts and the consciousness that we are directing it to. And that might be the biggest aha moment of empowerment as I share this story of moving from a state of victimhood into a state of empowerment, which I am fully leaning into during this powerful eclipse season, releasing any aspect of my life where I'm still a victim. So grateful for my son, London, who agreed to take on this mission that's helping me, that's helping this woman, it will help him and so many of his friends and young people that he decides to help and share this story with. And I feel really grateful that this is what my life looks like and that I get to share it with all of you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching me work in real time. Some of it's graceful, some of it I'm stumbling my way through. But this is the power of the time that we're in. And when we come together, when we witness, when we use our higher intelligence, like the Akashic records, to move through the areas where we are not only transmuting for ourselves, but we're transmuting for the collective. And I wish you all just the most grace and wisdom and support in your life as you go through what your unique journey looks like. Also, just remember, there are mentors, teachers, and wisdom keepers here to help you and to support you along the way. I think that one of the anchors that has gotten me through this experience is my connection with the Akashic records and my ability to not only channel what needs to come through in the moment to help my son, but also ask the most impactful questions that allow me a higher level of understanding so that I can do my work on the microcosm, but then also show up and to do my work on the macrocosm, which looks like sharing it with all of you. So thank you all so much for being here. If you are ready to take on training within the Akashic records, go to the akashicacademy.com. You can look under Work with Emily and you'll find your way to that Akashic records training. And of course, feel free to reach out to me personally too if you need some hand holding to get where you need to be. Thank you all so much for being here. I love you all, and I'll see you back here next week.